Here we are, part 2, where we are going to attempt to make a map. We've got our game configuration set up in Ultimate Doom Builder, see the first video if you haven't, and we're just going to go to File, New Map. It's going to ask us which game configuration we want to use. I'm going to start with the Doom format for the game Doom 2, but I'll go to UDMF a bit later in the video. And by default it's populated our map resources with the Doom 2 WOD that we specified. Level name can technically be anything. Leave it at map01, because map01 is the map name that the game is going to look for when you first start the game. When you're making multi-level WODs, you might want to change that, but map01 is a very good starting point. Okay, we have a blank canvas ready to go, and we can start drawing some lines to lay out a level. So we're going to go to Draw Lines mode, which is Control and D. And let's just draw something. Don't feel constrained by boxes. You can do diagonal lines, non-orthogonal lines. You can go quite mad in Doom, and it will be able to generally draw anything that you specify. So I'm just trying to... I've got notes next to me on what I want this room to look like, so I'm not making this up completely from scratch. Let's see. Yeah, that'll do. Okay. We're going to go to Things mode, and we're going to drop a thing, which is the name for an object that isn't part of the geometry in Doom. We're going to right-click to place a new one, and we're going to player 1 start. We're going to face him that way, and there we go. That's enough so far. Let's save that. I'm going to just put it into the Ramp Starter Pack folder, and the file name does not matter, unlike the name that you gave the map inside the WOD. So I'm just going to call this demo.wod. Alright, and we should be able to, these options are with monsters active and with no monsters, we should be able to load that up and suddenly find ourselves in a different take, which is a bit of a surprise because my video recording software did not actually record any of the full-screen Doom sections. So I've reconstructed it, and you can see that we've got the in and outy parts that we put on the south wall. We've got a bit of a room more to the north, so let's go back to the editor in the past. Let's make things a bit more interesting. Let's start the player off down a bit of a corridor so that they have to come into this room from the start. And what I'm hitting here is Control and D just to go into Draw Lines mode immediately. I'm also going to reduce the grid size a bit by using the square bracket keys so that I can draw out a rough staircase. That'll do. Okay. I'm just going to divide the room into some different sections so that we can edit the floor and ceiling height on each one, because Doom works in sectors where each sector has its own floor and ceiling height and several other properties like floor and ceiling texture and so on. So to make a Doom map, you've got to divide the map into slices in your head. Right-click, by the way, in vertices mode, press V, and you can add some new vertices and pull them around. What we're going to do is think about slices of the map between the floor and the ceiling, which is sort of a difficult thing to get your head around at first, but it does start to make sense, especially once we go into the 3D mode and we start pulling things around there. Let's see. We're going to want a door over here. Control-C, Control-V to move sectors around, copy and paste them, just as you would normally. Let's see. So we're going to go into Things mode again with T. We're going to right-click and drag him around here. And we're going to start him off there. Alright, let's start moving some floors and ceilings around. You can, and this is what we had to do in the 1990s, you can specify ceiling height and floor height for each individual sector on its own and have to do spatial arithmetic in your head to work out what your map's going to look like. Or alternatively, you can hit the Q key, which will give you this lovely 3D editing mode, which is much, much easier to deal with. So first of all, let's raise our ceiling a bit. I'm going to hit Control and Shift and left click to just select all the ceilings in all the sectors. Otherwise, you would have to select them individually, like this. And I'm going to raise things up a bit. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is that enough? Yes, it is. Okay. And for here, I'd like this to look like a staircase coming down into the room. So I'm going to raise that by 2. I'm going to raise that by 2. I'm going to select both of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 7 and 8. All right. I actually want this to be a bit bigger, so I'm going to vertices mode, right-click on those to drag them back. And that'll do. One of the tricks to do mapping is try to make things non-symmetrical as much as you can, because first of all, it's easier to navigate, and second, it makes the map look a lot more interesting. Alright, so now we've edited the floor heights of these sectors so that they form a staircase. We've got something missing there, but I'll come back to. Let's move these sectors up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm using the mouse wheel, by the way, to do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think we need to make this ceiling a bit higher. Let's only do it in the main room. We're going to leave this stairwell. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You don't have to go in 8. Sometimes I find it easier because a lot of the textures we have available are multiples of 256 or 128. Okay, so what I want to do is have the player start here. They're going to come down the stairs. They're going to encounter some enemies here. They're going to have to get up onto this platform where they will have to pull a switch that will let them progress into the door over here, and that'll be the exit. So let's start texturing this room a bit. We've got some missing textures, obviously, which need to be platforms. We've got the default textures all around the room and the default ceiling and floor, which we definitely want to change. So let's redecorate this first. I've just held Shift and pressed left click to select all the walls with the same texture that touch this one. And then, having selected these walls, you can right click and then go into your texture, and you can select a texture from here. Alternatively, you can Control and right-click, and that will bring you straight to the texture browser without having to go through the intermediate step. Let's see, what kind of look do we want for this room? I'm going to go with Stone 2. All right. For our ceiling, I'm just going to Shift, Control, left click again to select the adjacent ceilings. Control and right click. And this time you'll notice we have a separate set of textures available because textures on walls and textures on floors and ceilings are different in Doom. They're stored differently, they can't be interchanged. The floor and ceiling textures are called flats, the wall textures are just called textures. So let's select a suitable ceiling for this. We could go for... there are various categories, which is not an original Doom thing. This is something that Ultimate Doom Builder adds, and it's very, very useful. Let's go for... what I wonder. I don't really want the floor to look the same as the walls, because that can look fairly boring. We could have instead... I don't want to spend too much time on this on the video. Let's make it this one. I don't really like it, but we can change it later. All right. I think we need to move this down a bit so there's more of a entrance to this room. So I'm just going to pull this down with the mouse wheel, and there we go. And we can make the entrance have a different texture, so I can just select all of these walls inside here. Yep, that'll do. Control and right click. And let's make this brown 96. You'll notice that because the floors and ceilings are different heights, the texture kind of has a step pattern to it as well. Sometimes that looks good, sometimes you don't really want it. If you don't, what you can do is select all the similar textures with Shift and left click, and you can point to one of them, say this one, and Control A, and that will make Ultimate Doom Builder automatically align all of the textures around it. I'm going to copy and paste, Control C, middle click, or equally Control V to paste the texture, and I'm going to align again, Control A. Now there's something a bit strange about original Doom, that you need to set some flags on the upper and lower parts of a texture if you've got a wall that's above a gap. There are a couple of flags here, upper unpegged and lower unpegged. It just affects how the sector is, or rather the wall is drawn. So if we say upper unpegged, it means it will start drawing the texture from a different place, therefore making it look good in our context. We're going to need some textures down here as well. We're going to Control right click, and the step textures are usually very good for filling in that kind of purpose. Alright. Ceiling needs a bit of an overhaul here as well. We can make this one of my favourites to use, because nobody really looks at the ceilings, is Ceiling 5.1 and Ceiling 5.2. So we can make this our starting room. Alright, let's make this platform look a bit better. We're going to have some brown pipe textures. And we're going to move the alignment of these manually. We're going to hold Shift and say the up arrow, so that the top of the sector is aligned with, yeah, so not holding down Shift and selecting the up arrow lets you move by smaller degrees. So now we've got something that looks like the top of a wall aligned with where the top of this wall is. Let's see, let's actually move this line back a bit. I'm back in vertices mode with V, selecting these, and I'm going to move it back so that we've got a 24. Because 24 is the width of some very useful support textures. And those slot in quite neatly there. Let's make this a platform that the player can pull down, and select step 1 for its top. Now, you'll notice that this is a bit out of alignment, and we can't realign the floors and ceilings for elements in a Doom map. So what you have to do is fairly awkwardly maneuver your layout so that it matches. I've actually got it slightly wrong here. I'm going to move this over here. And we could select all these lines and try to get them aligned right, but I don't think it matters, because Doom handles non-orthogonal walls quite well, and they make a map look a lot more interesting. So I'm just going to go with that. Alright. So that's going to be a platform the player has to pull down. We're going to Control-C, Control-V up here. One of the other uses for support textures like this is that they ease the transition between two different textures of wall. So I'm going to split this wall up. In vertices mode again, double left click to select to create a new vertex. And the same on that side. So now we have a split wall that we can put support 3 onto. Now, we aligned these textures earlier because they were part of this wall. So there, you can see at the bottom left there, we've got a front offset at 102.64, and we could use our texture manipulating skills to put them into place, or we could hit Control and Shift and R to reset the alignment, and it will be perfect anyway. If you go into, where is it, Tools, Preferences, Controls, you can find a wealth of shortcuts here that can really speed up your workflow. And maybe I'll do a video specifically on editor shortcuts in the near future. We've still got this glaring at me. I don't like that, so I'm going to copy a texture over there. And I want this to have that. ceiling texture and these to have that ceiling texture, and I'm going to bring this down, and I'm watching the bottom left where it's got my sector height between the floor and ceiling, and I want that to be 128. Alright, let's put in another room, and this is just going to be our exit room. Again, do not feel constrained by orthogonal lines. Going to make this one symmetrical, just for the look of it. I'm going to put another set of lines here to form another sector. I don't have this perfectly symmetrical. The player will honestly probably not notice. How many is that? That's 72. I'm just hitting Control D here to start lines, and that's 80. Okay. Alright, that's enough fiddling. So that'll be our exit room, and there'll be a step up here, and I'll use the same step texture, Control C, Shift and middle click to apply it. We're going to have a switch on the wall here that will let the player exit. And that is probably all the rooms that I want to do for this map just now. Again, you can see that we've got some repeated textures here. If it bothers you, you can go to any wall, hit Control A, that'll align it all for you. But I think what we're going to do here is put something that resembles a door. So doors in Doom are sectors that are completely closed. Their floor is the same as the ceiling. If I pull this down, you can see the theory behind it, where we'll start the sector like this, and we'll allow the player to move it upwards so that it's open, and it can close again like this. Alright. First of all, what I want to do is make these door track textures, because those look good for being the sides of a door that's opened. It's quite a simple way to make a convincing looking door. You'll see that they move up and down as the door does. Sometimes that's what you want, because maybe you have a chain in the middle of them, and you want to look like the chain is counterweighting the door or something, but I don't want to do that just now. I would like to make sure that these textures don't move up and down with the door does. And we can do that by selecting the lower unpegged flag, and you'll be able to see the difference here, that the left one is now pegged to the bottom of the sector rather than the top. Let's set that as well on this one. You can do the same just by pressing the L key, and you can see the flag toggling on and off at the bottom left. Alright, let's move this door down. And we're going to use one of the 128 by 128 door textures. Big Door 2 is always a favourite. It's very doomy. Apply it to both sides. And instead of having the stone texture continue around there, let's put some door stop textures. Once again, these have been part of walls that we realigned before, so we can just select them all, Control and Shift and R to get them lined up again. Next, let's show you what I'm thinking for this map again. So the player is going to start here. They're going to go down these stairs, maybe some enemies to finish off here. They're going to pull down this platform up here, and we need a switch over on this wall as well. So let's move some vertices around. I'm going to make a little alcove that is 64. And I'll tell you why I'm doing that. I could just put the switch on the wall here, in a 64 wide wall. SW1 are the switch textures. Let's pick a random one, SW1 dirt. We can align it and so on. But the disadvantage with doing it this way is that if you have a tall sector and you put a switch directly on the wall, then it will repeat all the way down. So it doesn't matter here because the wall is short enough that we don't notice, but I generally like to make a different sector that's slightly recessed. Let's see, SW1, Stone 1 would fit quite nicely. And once again, we can put some doorstop textures in there just to make it look like it's recessed. Something else I like to do for switches is to make them more noticeable. We can make the walls around them different. So let's put some 24 wide textures here. And yeah, let's do that. Maybe there. Let's apply support 2 to these, and we're going to Control-Shift-R to reset their alignment. And then some tech wall. Tech wall 6. And that, I find, draws the player's attention to this a lot more. We can also use a different background for the switch itself. If we use a different SW1 texture, like SW1 metal. Alright. So now that we've set these things up, we should let the player interact with them. And we can do that by setting tags on our lines and our sectors. So let's look at the platform first, because that's the easier one. It's affecting the thing it's attached to. We're going to right-click on this line, and I showed this briefly before. You can see its textures, you can see its flags, you can also see its actions, and we want the player to take an action here. There is a straight list of them, which is fairly confusing, but Ultimate Doom Builder lets you use this list view as well. Now, you need to know the code behind the actions when you're mapping for the original Doom. There are 2 characters at the start of every action, and those mean the nature of the action and how many times you can do it. So W1 would mean when the player walks over this line, and it will only happen once. S1 means you can switch this texture by using the use key, and it only happens once. DR, for example, means act like a door, and you can do it repeatedly. So what we want to do in this instance is we want it to act like a lift. So let's open up that folder. We want it to be repeatable. So we're going to use SR lift lower weight raise. And as you can tell, it can be quite a challenge to find exactly what you're looking for in this list. The actions are absolutely tied to their number, and you can't separate the action and the amount of time a lift lowers or whatever it is. But we'll address that when we go to UDMF. Alright, and we're going to give this a tag as well. We're going to use a new tag. This is tag 1. So we've got an action here. When the player hits the use key, they will lift lower weight raise. They can do this repeatedly, and it acts like a switch. The game also needs to know what we need to lift lower weight raise, so we're going to give the same tag to this sector. And UDB tells us when we hover over the line in lines mode, or we hover over the sector in sectors mode, that this line is now going to affect this sector. Let's do the same thing with this switch. So this time, maybe I want this door to have a key associated with it. What we'll do here is we'll carve out this wall. And this is a normal wall just now. We're going to make a little recess here. Oh, no, we're not. Okay. Make sure that you close sectors when you build them. Ultimate Doom Builder is usually quite good at guessing what you mean. Sometimes it helps to draw sectors clockwise. I've just done this one anti-clockwise, which is why it might not be as good. But it's a lot clearer to it if you actually draw all the lines. And we're going to put a little alcove behind this. In which we will stash a key. Alright. So you can see that these 2 sectors just adopted the ceiling height of this one next to it. So I'm going to bring that down with my mouse wheel again. That looks like it'll do. This is a 96 height texture. We're going to paste that onto the wall. And we're going to take just the front one this time. No, actually, you know what? We're going to take the floor. And we're going to move that up. And we're going to paste that texture over it. So here, that looks like a fairly innocent wall. But secretly, we've got a floor here that we can lower down. Let's just put a texture on the back of this. The player won't see it, but it helps to be neat. One of the other things I'm going to do is actually adjust the height of this so that the ceiling and the floor look aligned. And I can just pull that up like that. And that looks good. Okay, we've now got a lip here, which we can just texture like that as well. All right. So what this switch is going to do is it's going to lower this floor, which is the same height as the ceiling. And it's going to act a bit like a door, but in reverse. I'm actually going to put a support texture here as well. And we're going to make this a bronze texture. I am 100% making this up as I go along. Alright, so we want this to be lowered. So let's make this switch do that. We're going to right-click. The action is, and we can filter, switch once, floor, and let's see what we have. We can lower to lowest floor, which sounds... Oh, excuse me. We can lower to lowest floor, which sounds good to me, and we're going to give this a new tag. Tag 2. So, the sectors with tag 2 will be lowered to the lowest floor there. That is going to give us our red key card. And let's put some actions on this door now. There is actually a quick way to make doors in Doom Builder. You can shift an L, I think it is. It's not. Mode, vertices, blindness, let me find it a minute. Sectors, make door, shift and D. I should know this because I wrote this dialog box. So there are certain automatic things you can do to a door. It'll align everything correctly, so you don't need to do it in multiple stages the way I did. But I prefer showing it from first principles so it's more understandable what a door is. All right, so now for this one, we want to select both sides of this. This is the big door texture on the front and the big door texture on the back. We'll right-click on this one, and this time we're going to select D, R for repeated, and we're going to assign it the red key. So this is DR door, red, open, wait, close. There's something special about doors in Doom in that you don't need to tag them. For something like a lift, you'll need to specify which tag goes where, and even if it's right on the other side. But for doors, it will assume that you're opening the same sector that you're pointing at. Doors also need, you'll see these ticks on the line defs. Doors also need to be facing outwards with the front line def towards the player. So we're going to flip this one by pressing F in lines mode. And that should now work as a red door. It is somewhat impolite to have the player have to discover for themselves what a door needs. So we're going to replace these door stop textures that I put in with the door red texture so that it's clear to the player that this door requires the red key. Lastly, we're going to make the switch that I promised earlier. We'll make this one the stone switch. Going to have to realign a bit there. And then we're going to right-click on this. We're going to go to our exit actions. We're going to just go to exit. There's switch one or walk once, exit level. And we're going to just give it exit level. Again, no tags necessary for that. Alright, there is one little detail that I quite like to put in my Doom maps where it's nice to have a little door that looks like the player came through. So I'm going to make that here. I'm going to lower this ceiling so that we've got 64 height, maybe. I'm going to right-click on that and say door 3, which is traditionally what the original Doom maps use. I think this needs to be 72 high. You can see the texture on the lower left as well, 64 by 72, which shows you how big it is. Copy this texture, use it up on the whatever that part of a door is called, And that looks pretty good. Let's put the doorstop textures in here as well. All right. So I'm just thinking ahead here. There's a bit more we can possibly do. We can add a little platform here to make the room more interesting. We're going to raise that up again. And we're going to do the same thing. Shift and left click to select all the similar textures. Let's make this, let's make that one look a bit different with a different alignment. And when you've got a large expansive floor in Doom, I'd like to make things just a little different by having dips and details in them. You don't want to do this too much, because otherwise it might make it difficult to move about. But something like that I usually like doing. Let's lower that down a bit. Use one of my favourite step textures, step 5. Align them all. And we're going to use Doom's classic blue carpet, which is flat 14. Meanwhile, up on the ceiling, we're going to move this. We're going to put a lip around this as well, maybe with another step texture. Doesn't look all that good. Let's try again. We could actually use the brown pipe texture again and just use the part of it that looks a bit like a step. There we go. And up here, we're going to select the texture F Sky. No, we're not. We're going to use F Sky 1. There it is. I couldn't see it because I was on the base subdivision, whatever you call it, category. So if I select all textures, I can see F Sky 1. F Sky 1 is a special flat texture where it will, instead of showing the literal flat that you've specified, it will show the sky. And the sky is map dependent, and I'll show you how to affect it a bit later on. All right. Is that going to be everything? Let me think. Let's put a couple of details in as well. I don't want to go too absolutely nuts for the sake of making this video a bit shorter. But I do get carried away with detail. Let's make these look like computery walls. And you know what, we can do that here as well. There's quite a useful feature when you're doing non-orthogonal lines, where you can go to Edit, Align Grid to Selected Line Def, and you see we've got a slightly wonky grid now. And now we can draw an off. What am I saying? An off grid, an off normal grid line. Now it's not perfect because you can see that the vertices can't have fractional positions, so it does something that's near enough. Anyway, let's reset our grid transform. There it is. And we're going to do much the same here. We're going to use the Comp T All texture, which is a really nice big computery one. And we're going to use a Support 2 texture there as well. Looks pretty good. Okay. Let's save that and let's run our map. So here we are in our Doom level. Let's take a walk down the stairs and see if things work. First of all, we've got to go to the lift over here. Already I can see a problem. I missed something out and I'll show you why that happened in a moment. Let's keep on going. We switch the switch. That alcove opened. We can get the red key. We can open the exit. And we can finish the level. Okay, let's go back to the editor. So let's examine this mistake. When we pull down this lift, you can see that we don't have a texture in here, so Doom does not know what to display. Let's fix that. What's a good texture for the inside of a lift, I wonder? Can be anything. Let's use metal 5. Alright. Put that back in place. We're going to test our map again, so that I can quickly show you that now we can pull this lift down, we've got the metal texture behind it correctly, and we can no longer stare off into the void beyond the realms of time and space. This would not be a Doom map without something you need to shoot at, so let's populate it with some enemies. Let's put a couple of imps up here. You can explore, by the way, the monsters and all the objects that you have available through this tree. So let's put a couple of imps up here, ready to greet you as you come into this door. We'll put some former humans that the player also has to worry about. And we'll let them have to fight it out here before they get the shotgun. Let's give them a couple of pieces of ammunition as well. We can get it under ammunition and box of shells, maybe shotgun shells. I generally like using the smaller pickups because you can scatter them around and it makes the map look more interesting than having a couple of big giant pickups. But I know that John Romero didn't design maps like that, so it's definitely not right or wrong. Let's put a shotgunner at the end here. Oh, I always do this. I call him the shotgunner, but his name is not the shotgunner. It is not the sergeant, it's the former sergeant. Right, I think I covered up that series of mistakes pretty well. Once the player gets into the exit, it is traditional to give them a last enemy to worry about, so let's put a demon down there. Going to move these lines a bit so that he has the room to move down the stairs if he wants to. Alright. Now this shotgunner has a clear line of sight to the player from the start, so I'm actually going to put a pillar into this room. I'm going to draw a new square, go into sectors mode, and just delete it. So now we have a big missing texture in the middle of our room, and we're going to correct that by using one of the metal textures. I wonder if this one will look okay. Kind of. It doesn't look particularly good against the sky because the you've got this lip over here, but I'll leave that as it is for now. And having done that, I might actually want to move the room a bit so that it's wider. And we can make quite sweeping changes like that with Doom maps. We're going to go to vertices mode, we're going to select all of these, and we're going to move them 64 up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and there we go. Going to move our imps back a bit. And move our pickups. And that should do it. Let's do another pillar. Just while we're at it. I missed on my first click there, so I'm going to correct that. Let's make him... Shift and L, by the way. You can get an object to point at the mouse cursor immediately rather than going into the dialog box and adjusting the angle manually, that's the word. Shouldn't do these in the mornings. Metal 2, metal 3, who knows? I'm just going to do that. And I'm going to select them all and bring that down so that it looks like it's joining up with the floor. It looks kind of like they're disappearing into the sky here, so I'm actually going to, well, first of all, so that they don't move, I'm going to select that, and press L to lower unpeg them. And that will mean they don't move as I move this around. So that looks slightly better. Not very much, but it looks slightly better. Maybe that's a bit better. Let's see. I don't really know. And you can give these a bit more of a grounded feel, because it might look like it's kind of just disappearing into the sky just now. You can also make little beams and whatever else you like that kind of attach them to the rest of the map. Let's try that. It's easier when you're dealing with skies because you can see it's painting the sky onto the top of the sector as well. If you press Tab, you can get it to temporarily not show the sky, so that it's a bit easier to work with. Yeah, I'm going to change these so that they're that. Move it down a bit. I'm going to use a metallic, well, first of all, actually, I'm going to select those and the rest of the things that should be sky. I'm going to raise those back up a bit because I liked I liked how that lip looked. And for these little ones, we'll just use a metallic texture. Metal is quite a versatile one because it doesn't really have any divisions that are visible. And we're going to use a metallic style of flat as well on these. Maybe just ceiling 5.1. Maybe ceiling 5.2. Let's select all those again. Seal 5.2. And we're going to turn on the sky again, pressing Tab. There we go. It's not absolutely the best thing in the world, but it'll do. I'm going to make this look a bit more interesting as well. You see, I just can't stop adding details and fiddling with things. Don't be like me. Know where to stop. That'll do. Let's put some ammunition in here as well. Maybe a medikit. And we're going to put one in there. Copy and paste. All right. We're also going to put a bit of a surprise in here. We're going to unleash a demon and a shotgunner. And let's give a nasty surprise to the player here as well. Let's make these, instead of just details, we're going to put a little compartment behind here that can store more monsters. Alright, so they've inherited that texture. Let's instead make this tech wall 4. We're going to... Well, it doesn't really matter what we make these. I'm going to make them door tracks. And there are a couple of things we could do here. We could make these tag 2 as well, so that when the player hit that switch, they would also, as well as lowering that, they would lower these sectors as well. Or what I think I'm going to do is use a different action instead. Let's give these the texture comp word, and on the back as well. And you can just be a metal texture. Let's release a couple more imps. Give the player some ammunition to deal with them. And what we're going to do here is we're going to make that happen when the player walks over a line. You don't have to have lines attached to other lines like all the other lines in this map are. I'm just going to put a sort of tripwire across here. And I'm going to flip that so that the front line is facing where the player is probably going to go. I'm getting ahead of myself here. I moved this up before because I'm thinking in my head a bit later on. But let's do that for now. We're going to use this invisible line. We're going to make this walk once, floor, and we want that to lower to the lowest floor. that's going to be tag 3. We are going to tag both of these sectors as tag 3. And that will now be connected to there. One more thing that I haven't really paid attention to is the floor textures. So let's make this a more techy looking floor. What's in the base category? This is always a favorite. And let's make these a different floor as well. All right. Another thing we can do to decorate the map is just add some decorative things. Let's look at decorations. We're going to have none of the more hellish decorations just now. Let's keep this as a tech base, because it's what I'm good at. Vaguely. I like how these are all marked as decoration instead of horrific sight. So you've got light sources, you've got obstacles. I like putting, and I've been trying to find it this whole time I've been talking, because usually I just type it in. It's Tall Techno Pillar, that's what it's called. Let's just put some of those in. All right. I'm going to make these floor lamps instead. If I can find them. They're probably light sources. Floor lamp. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Let's put a pillar in one of the corners here. And we'll also extend that well, not extend the sector, but create a new sector by making these lines. And we're going to lower that down so it's 128. And yeah, you can already see by changing the ceiling and floor heights, you can have a much more interesting room. Equally, we could put some lights in the ceiling by creating a new sector, pushing it up a bit. Let's use this texture again. Align it a bit. That doesn't look very good. Let's use step 6 instead. That'll do. What looks like lights? Oh, so that doesn't look great because it's facing the wrong way. And what I'm going to need to do as well, if we select ceilings mode, then I'll be able to see the ceiling, and I can just align it like that. All right. One of the other things that you can do is adjust the light in each room. So let's say that this room has got some brightness to it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to keep that 192, and I'm actually going to make this darker as it goes. Control and the mouse wheel is the fast way to do your brightness. So that's going to be 144. I'm going to keep this light because the sky's shining in, but maybe I'll put some shadows on the floor where the beams are. See up there. That's 144, that's good. We're going to make this a bit brighter because it's got lights. And maybe this looks a bit like a light source as well. We can change these so that they're light 5. Well, that doesn't even look very good, so maybe we won't change these to the light 5. We'll instead make something that looks like a light on the wall. And this is just a combination of a few textures in a little set piece that I like to do. There. Down here, that can be light as well. Maybe we'll put a light in the ceiling just to justify it. Maybe we'll actually copy and paste this arrangement. Now you can see there's a problem here because the sector remained at the same height when we copy and pasted it. So we're going to select the floor and the ceiling. We're going to move that down. All right. And this ceiling can be different as well. This one can be that. There are also certain effects you can put on the sectors, like you can make them flicker. I'm going to make these the same sector by saying Shift J to join them together, because I don't want the effects to be different in the light and outside the light. I'm going to say that this one, there are not many effects you can put on sectors, but maybe that light flickers. And we're going to make this a bit darker, but we're going to gradually increase it until we're at the exit room. Alright, so that should look a bit more atmospheric and a bit better. So here we go, this is the whole thing. We've got our pillar, we've got our light. Let's head down into the fray. We've got the imps firing at us from the top. We're going to fight our way through here, get our shotgunner, take out the placed shotgun. Here's our flickering sector. That looks pretty good. Let's pull this lift down so we can get up to the imps. And we're going to watch as we move over about here. And we walked over the line, so it activated the doors. The imps come out to get us. We've got them instead. We activated our switch, which releases some more monsters, but also gives us access to the red key. I'm going to grab this medikit over here to repair the holes given to me by the first shotgunner. And there we go. That is the end of our map. And there we go, that is our Doom map. So I've gone on a bit longer than I expected, but I'm going to do a section as well on doing the same thing but in UDMF format to show how it's different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of this and I'm going to put it in a new map. We're going to select the UDMF format this time. We're going to say OK. And we're going to paste. Alright. You will notice that this has changed just slightly because we are now using the free Doom textures instead of the Doom textures. The doors look a bit different, but everything is functionally the same. I got this a bit wrong because I didn't align the lights right when I pasted it, so let's go to ceilings and let's move it around until I get them right. Oh, I wasn't in sectors mode. Reducing the grid size, reducing it again. And we now have our map aligned with the ceiling. That's great. Let's change that floor a bit. Okay. So we haven't copied in any of the things. Let's save this map as something else. I'm actually going to change a couple of the textures just so that we know, so there's a visual distinction between them. I'm going to use flat 5 down there. I'm going to use maybe a different stone texture on the walls. That's a very thin sector, a very thin wall. What's a good alternative here? Oh, you'll notice as well that suddenly, because we are in a UDMF format map, the restrictions of flats and textures no longer apply. I can perfectly well apply a floor texture to a wall. in UDMF. The format does not make a distinction between them like the original Doom does. Maybe I'll look in CC4 text and use one of those. Let's make this a sort of gloomy grey brick texture. That'll do. Alright. Looks good. Let's get the things. So let's open our previous map, demo.wad. We're going to go into things mode, drag a box around those, copy those as well. Back to udmf.wad, which I didn't save after my changes, which was a mistake. And there we go. Oh no, I did. I don't know what happened to this flap. Maybe I undid it by mistake. Let's make that... No, not that, because it's the same as the surrounding floor. Select some flats. Do you know what? Let's make it water. Alright, and you'll see the enemy sprites have changed. They still behave the same, even the enemies look very different. Alright. There's something I forgot to do in the original map that I'm going to do here. I'm going to extend this up a bit and move this. You can also have what's called mid-textures, which can give you a bit of decoration in a different way that sectors can't. I'm going to stretch this line all the way over here. And I'm going to say, on the front, the middle texture should be... BRN is quite a good one. Let's go to all. Yeah, BRN small c. We're going to have to do the same on the back, because we're going to be able to see this line from both the north side and the south side. And now we've got a sort of paper-thin decoration. Another useful thing we can do is lower unpeg this, and it'll snap to the floor instead of snapping to the ceiling. I'm going to make a little pillar here as well. Just a metal one. So that it looks like it stops. And the last thing we need to do to this line def is make it impassable. Now you'll notice this menu when we're in UDMF format is slightly more overwhelming than the original Doom menu. We've got about, what, 20, 30 flags instead of the 5 or 6 that the original Doom format did. We've got a whole new action argument section and activation section. I'll come to these in just a moment, but the important thing is we're going to make this impassable. The actions and tags work differently in UDMF. Most of the things still apply. We can still do all exactly the same things, upper and lower unpeg, apply textures, draw lines, and so on. But the way that the player interacts with things is different. We're going to select this line. So, it doesn't have any activation flags. Let's actually get rid of this action entirely just now so I can do it from first principles. Instead of having this list of prefixed activations and actions, UDMF separates the thing that you want to happen from the thing that caused it. So the action is the thing we want to happen, and we want something very similar to our original map. We're going to open up platform, and we're going to use platform lower weight raise lip, which I think is a nice, neater way to do platforms. We're going to have a lip amount of 8. Alright, UDMF also has a feature that kind of copies what Doom does with doors, that you don't actually need to tag the sector opposite a line if you want the action to work on the one opposite the line. So it can make bad habits, because if you translate this into a Doom map and switch something with tag 0, then it'll assume tag 0 means everything that isn't tagged on the map, your entire map becomes a door and it crashes. So I am going to do sector tag 1 here. Notice that this is not the same as the line tag. We can actually get rid of this tag. The action in UDMF specifies which sector we want to act on, and the line tag is completely separate. So let's make this go turbo down, and stay there for 2 seconds, which we couldn't do in the original Doom. We were all fixed in the speed and the reverse delay and everything by the action number that we wanted to perform. We should be able to do this repeatedly, and it should happen when the player presses use. Alright. This one is going to be ceiling waggle, which definitely don't want to do, so let's make this, what was it, floor, lower to lowest floor. You can also lower by specific values now, which is extremely handy when you don't have a lowest floor or highest floor around. That's going to be sector tag 3, and we're going to make that really fast as well, because you saw it was really slow in the original map, which gave the player time to react, and I don't want them to do that. This is not going to be repeatable, it's going to happen when the player walks over it. And again, we don't need the identification tag for the line. So far so good. This one's very similar. We're going to floor lower to lowest floor. Sector tag 2. That can be a normal. And we're going to happen when the player presses use. Select both these lines. Floor raise and crash. Well, that definitely wouldn't have worked. Let's replace that with a door. And you'll notice we don't have any keys this time. So we're going to door raise, which means the traditional door open close. Actually, let's go with door generic so I can show you all the options. Sector tag 0, just like we did before. This is going to be a repeatable action when player presses use. Movement speed can be fast. The type, we have options on this. We can make it open close like a normal Doom door, it could stay, or you can make it close open or close stay, which are a bit rarer. Alright, so let's open close. The delay between opening and closing can be 4 seconds, and we've got lock here, which is why we don't have a ton of different door actions for red and blue and yellow keys. We can select that the player needs to have any red key to get through this door. The exit line, I forgot the exit line. Oops. I had that selected when I selected the exit line, so C to clear my selection. They're called end in UDMF, and we're going to end normal. Position is used for hub-based maps where you want some maps to lead into other maps in different locations and start the play in different places. We don't want to do that. We just want to say when the player presses use. End normal. And let's go through this again. So here we are with the free Doom assets. As you saw in the editor, things look a little bit different all round, but everything is functionally identical. The monsters have the same behaviours, even though they look very different from the default Doom ones. Generally, I prefer the Doom monsters and sprites in general, but a lot of people with considerably more talent than I do have worked very hard on getting us these original alien sprites. Let's test this red door as well, because I didn't do that in the other test, so we're making sure that the door actually works as a red key door. You could see that platform could pull down a lot faster, and a similar story here, where that trap springs a lot better than it did with the gradual reveal that we had using just the vanilla actions. And there's one of these hideous worms that the equivalent of demons are in Free Doom. Let's gather our ammo and our health. Eliminate the last one. And that's it. We have a fully functioning map. Alright, and that is how you make a Doom map quickly in Ultimate Doom Builder. I've probably been going for about 2 hours now. I meant this video to be about 10 minutes. But there we go. I get carried away sometimes. I just like Doom so much. Next time I'll show you how to submit it to the ramp project.